It's a really, really good video, but it's really long. H Bomber Guy's videos on video on, whoa, dude, 2 videos on my homepage about, ignore the Marvel Rivals videos, about Hampton, about Fred Hampton. One from Harper O'Connor and another one from Vox. Why the U.S. government murdered Fred Hampton. You could play the beginning. He does a TLDR.
This is my church outfit people pants.
Yeah, I mean, it's really long. It's a really long video. 10 million views, deserved, to be honest. But he explains, let's watch just a tiny bit. Let's watch just a tiny bit.
Don't worry, vaccines are perfectly safe. According to me, you might notice a little prick. Hello and welcome back to hell. I'm just vaccinating my profiteroles, immunizing them against the horrendous disease known only as not enough cream, itis. Unfortunately, while vaccines are great at stimulating my balls,
I like to think that he's just gotten more and more insane as politics has gotten more and more insane.
in humans they've become quite the controversial topic. In the late 90s, an anti-vaccine movement started to pick up steam, claiming that they cause autism.
And the movement has plenty of washed-up celebrities flushing it, including what's-his-name, and that one, and some more. Here's 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump, coming out against...
I just want to know, how many people... You guys have all seen this video, right? Ones if you've seen it, twos if you haven't. I assume most of you have seen it. I mean, it's a really good video. I haven't seen it since it came out. If you haven't seen it and you have anti-vaxxers in your family, please send this to them. Like, this video has 10 million views and some of you haven't seen it? H Bomber Guy does not like when people watch his videos without permission. I don't know how to tell you that that's not true. I've watched I've watched many of his videos. I think it's, considering that we're mutuals, I think it's fine. I think it's okay. All right. Are you just an anti-vaxxer? Are you just an anti-vaxxer? You might just unfollowed and left. Not the anti-vax. RFK. Don't you have legislation to be removing? Don't you have regulations to be removing? What are you doing in my chat right now? What are you doing in here? He's literally made a joke about Hassan reacting in the plagiarism video. Yeah. He doesn't have this problem. No, it's... Unless you're literally re-uploading content or doing like the reacts that are like, you guys have all seen the TikTok reacts. Yeah. He understands what fair use is. I think where it gets questionable is like the people who, excuse me, Osmongold, who react to videos immediately after a video has just come out like a day ago. And then one of the YouTube editors posts their reaction immediately. Because that does draw viewers away. But first of all, we don't have like industrial complex here. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 people that post my YouTube reaction stuff. And I don't pull like that many views on YouTube. Like whereas like the Asmongold ones and the XQC ones are brutal. They're really, really, really brutal. Where it's like the same thumbnail, except it'll be like XQC's face on it. And then it'll be like the original video had 500,000 views and the XQC reaction video has 700,000 views. And that's like, oh dude, you actually are. Whereas I've talked about this many times, but I'll say it one more time. The audience on Twitch is not the same as the audience on YouTube. Guys, I have like a Twitch friend that mostly watches Twitch. I'm kind of disgusting. I'm a YouTube watcher. I know I'm a streamer, but I am a YouTube watcher. And they don't know who YouTubers are. Guys, they didn't know who Matt Pat was. They didn't know who Philip DeFranco was. Stop saying who! Stop saying who in my chat. Stop saying who in my chat. Stop. Okay? No. Don't do that to me. I feel sick. The point that I'm making, okay? Who the fuck is Matt Pat? Stop. No. The point that I'm making is that there is a different audience on YouTube than there is on Twitch. The people who go to Twitch want someone that will curate for them, and they are generally not going to go to YouTube first. The average person that likes to go to Twitch, that has a lot of watch hours on Twitch, that is subscribed to people on Twitch, that is, when you open your phone, do you click YouTube or Twitch first? If you click Twitch first, that person, that view, that's not someone that would have went and watched it on YouTube, right? That's why I thought it was funny that Ethan Klein was like, you're literally stealing my content. It's like, what? People could have went and watched your YouTube video. I didn't stop them from watching it. I literally didn't stop them from watching it. What are you talking about? What? No. What the hell? What are you talking about? Right? So anyways, the point that I'm making is that I think the problem with React, especially with Twitch streamers Reacts, is when Twitch streamers upload their React video immediately to YouTube, because now someone who actually is interested in like the topic of Fred Hampton, and you work really hard, you're a YouTuber, you worked really hard, you worked for months and months and months, trying to upload a really well-researched video on Fred Hampton, and then a Twitch streamer reacts to it and gets triple your views. That feels bad. That feels bad because a YouTube viewer went to YouTube and they got recommended XQC's video, not yours. And I think that's a major difference. I also think a big part of it is video release time. So yeah,
I watch
uploading
YouTube
reacts to
anytime
YouTube
Denims,
is
Mike, Hassan, or Caroline is in live. So basically, I only watch.
yeah. So those are mostly XQC viewers though. Not necessarily. But moving on. Yeah, no, H. Farmerga doesn't mind people reacting. He takes issue with people who are, it literally is just stealing. Like there's nothing being added. And the uploads are just literally taking views away from the original person who put all the work in. And especially when the original video isn't linked, when there's no credit given to the original creator, that's fucked. Okay, enough yapping. I want you guys to see this video since measles are on the rise again. Let's go measles. Yeah, let's go. Any measles enjoyers in chat? Woo. Yes. Good.
Medicine.
He once famously twet, "No more massive injections. Tiny children are not horses." I mean, of course they aren't. Horses aren't even real. But if there's an entire movement of people with documentaries and websites and Facebook pages with thousands and thousands of members backed by the
Former
US president, why does everyone else seem to think they're obviously wrong? Has the mainstream medical establishment science cucked a majority of people into thinking they're safe so they can keep making money selling them? The vaccine debate is complex and multi-layered and hasn't been resolved for over 2 decades, so obviously it needs me to come and put an end to it in the space of a single YouTube video by doing what I'm best at, destroying things with my mouth. Oh,
Stop! Ew.
oh hi Mum. Was I vaccinated?
Have you been looking into moving out lately, son?
Now the clever clogs among you.
God, what's wrong with him, dude? I think COVID was a bit unique that there was no physical indicator of COVID the way that there is for measles or even like monkeypox. I think, unfortunately, conservatives, and I know you're not supposed to say this, but I think we've all agreed that civility politics have gotten us nowhere. So I've given up on civility politics. Conservatives are really dumb. And I think they really think that because they can't see the COVID, there's no COVID. Like literally, oh, if COVID is so widespread, how come I don't see anyone with COVID? Like, I do think that conservatives are that stupid. Again, sorry if that's mean, but I think that's why they think it's a hoax. The object permanence isn't there. Like, you can show them x-ray scans of people who've had their lungs ravaged by COVID, who their lungs literally look worse than someone who's been smoking for over a decade. And they're like, I'm going to need to see the lungs myself. That x-ray could be fake. It could be fake. I actually don't even know how to read an x-ray. So that doesn't mean anything to me. Whereas with measles, I have a little bit more hope because there is a physical indicator, like on your epidermis, that you are sick. So yeah, Hassan, literally like Hassan said, that we're Americans. We especially conservatives respond to colors and shapes. And with COVID, there was a lack of that. Yes, precisely. Correct. Very, very, very correct. Oh, your epidermis is showing. Oh, I showed you epidermis. Vaccine, please? Send vaccine?
We'll know that there was an anti-vaccine movement of sorts in the 1800s when they were first introduced, but that movement died out on its own a long time ago. Of smallpox. The main argument in the modern movement is that they might cause autism. So let's see what, on paper, this claim is supported by.
And I know you guys already know this about me, but what type of fucking piece of shit parent do you have to be that you'd rather your kid die from a preventable illness than have autism? Like, don't have kids! Don't have kids! You're a piece of shit! Don't have kids! You shouldn't have kids! You clearly are not a good enough person to have kids! Please, for the love of God, don't have kids, you piece of shit! Sorry, that's something that I feel really strongly about, and it makes me really mad. It makes me really mad that people are that insane. It makes me, I lose my mind sometimes thinking about how selfish some parents are. Like, it's actually disgusting. And like, you will burn in hell. Christians, if Christians are right, you will burn in hell. So, yeah, just want you guys to remember, maybe don't have kids if you're not going to love them unequivocally as an idea.
Yes, I just ended a sentence with a preposition, and if that annoyed you, we get it. Your school was expensive. We're all very happy for you.
Part 1. The easy version, in case you don't feel like watching this whole fucking video.
In 1998, a study came out alleging a link between the MMR vaccine and autism. MMR vaccinates against measles, mumps, and rubella, which saves kids from having to get multiple painful shots and parents from having to know what rubella is. It was published in The Lancet, a very well-known medical journal, which made it seem credible. However, the paper was eventually found guilty of being bad. The science turned out to be bonkers, and multiple other studies on literally millions of children did not show that there was a link, and the paper was eventually retracted by the journal that published it. So retracted that it literally has retracted written all across every page in big red letters. My printer just does black and white, so I actually got an artist's impression of the real version. So far, that's some pretty shaky ground on the anti-vaccine side. But later, new evidence came out that...
Oh, that's it. That's all the evidence. This segment is over now. Part 2. The existential horror of... Wait, that's it?
No, seriously. That's all the evidence. There is nothing else even remotely credible. There are some fringe pet theories as to what chemical in the vaccines causes the autism, but since vaccines don't cause autism, they're kind of putting the cart before the squid here. The anti-vax movement had next to no evidence 20 years ago, and now they have even less.
But hold on there, Daddy-O. Sure, you can sum up the entire...
This is also another one of those things that it just seems like there's been a rise, but that's only because we're appropriately diagnosing it now. Similar to, I would say, a lot of other things that, a lot of other types of neurodivergence or even mental illness. Previously, you were just like the crazy person or the freak or the weirdo of the town, of the village, whatever. And now we have actual diagnoses for things. I'm not talking about suppressing things like left-handedness, because that's its own separate argument. I'm talking about things like depression. People say, no, I think there's something wrong with me. Like, I think there's something, I am constantly sad. I feel like shit. I don't want to do anything ever. And there's no amount of sunshine and talking to my friends that's helping me. Like, there are people who deal with clinical depression who have a chemical imbalance. And yeah, these things might help a little bit, but there's something wrong with how their body is producing the chemicals that they need. The rest of us get to have a lot of that stuff for free. And for some of these people, that's not the case. And they would go to doctors. I'm in this photo and I don't like it. They would go to doctors and the doctors say, that's made up. Just go hang out with your friends. Go to the gym. You'll feel better. But that's not how that works, right? That's literally not how that works. And I think for a very long time, that's how we treated autism as well, where autism is a spectrum and you don't have to be one particular form of autism that we have. If you went to school, I think in the 2000s or 2010s, you know what I'm talking about, that you have to have a high support system, that you can be on the spectrum, but not necessarily need high support system. 127, yeah. That doesn't magically mean that that person isn't autistic. Just because you can function in society and you can hold a job or whatever, you can make friends, that doesn't mean that you are magically not autistic. And so we've seen a higher rate or like more people being diagnosed with autism, where these people get this diagnosis, like people like Jacksepticeye, that say, oh, no wonder I spent most of my life masking. So that's what that was. Oh, is that why I just struggled socially? Like I can do all of these things, but it's hard for me. Again, previously, if you had social problems or you were on the spectrum or you were any type of neurodivergent, you just either had to learn to deal with it and mask, and no one would ever, you would never get validation that what you were doing was more difficult, that you were masking and you were trying your best to perform the way that you're supposed to perform. There was no validation for that. You just had to do it, deal with it, grow the fuck up. Whereas now we actually can help people. Yay! Isn't that dope that we can actually help people? We can help kids and not make them feel like freaks and that they can get whatever assistance they need. It comes with a lot of grief. Yeah. But anyways, yeah. Same thing with like ADHD, for example, where ADHD is being overdiagnosed, quote unquote, but realistically, it's just that we just called these people lazy for the longest time.
entire issue in 52 seconds, wow. But really, I don't think that's good enough. Everyone who's anti-vax at this point has probably already heard and isn't convinced by the easy version. I mean, if you're on the fence about vaccines, you're not going to change your mind because someone told you there was a paper once, but it got retracted, no matter how much they pitch shift their voice in post.
But what if you did want to change someone's mind on topics like this? The data on this issue is discouraging. Research shows that when someone becomes personally invested in an idea, they can become very close-minded, or worse, a YouTuber.
Political science professor Brendan Nyhan and his team spent 3 years studying how over 1,700 parents reacted to various different attempts to convince them to vaccinate their children, and found that no matter what they tried, parents who started out against vaccination didn't change their minds. And worse, trying to correct false claims about vaccines actually made some parents more against vaccinating. Nyhan told The New Yorker, "It's depressing. We were definitely depressed."
Now, as a fellow fan of logic and reason, I'm also doing great. But in today's particular, shall we say, socioeconomic climate, it's extra pressing that we figure out how to get everyone on the same page with regards to public health. So the purpose of this video isn't just to point out a group that's wrong about something. The real question is, when someone is wrong about something, not just this, how do you change their mind? Now, personally, I'm not sure how to do that. If it was easy for humans to change their mind about stuff, then this video wouldn't need to exist, would it? But maybe we'll find some answers by exploring what convinced people vaccines might be dangerous in the first place. We should probably begin with that old 1998 study, because let's be honest, how many people on either side of this discussion have actually read it? People don't read scientific papers, they check out the blogs or videos of people who they already agree with and they tell them what the science said.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to tell you guys, as the 117 that I am, that fucking sits there and reads papers, it's boring. It's so boring. Oh my God. And it's just very time consuming, because if you're trying to look into anything ever, like literally anything ever, there's the primary category, and then there's all the subcategories, and each of those subcategories may or may not have studies on them, and then each of those categories also may have meta-studies, and when there's meta-studies, you have to go into each of the studies to verify that there was a good sample size, to verify what the actual scientists claimed about or the researchers claimed about the research that they did. A lot of the time when why way too dank? Oh, the points I was making, yeah. It's brutal. It's fucking brutal, dude. It's really brutal. Lose my place 300 times and give up? Yeah. Yeah, you can do your research like Ethan and put some words in Google and believe the first result that fits your beliefs. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, even just trying to, like, read the UN report on sexual abuse in Israel. Have you guys tried to read that thing? It is dense. It's so dense. It's like, how many pages? It was like 40 pages or something. It was a lot. It was a lot. Sitting through that and trying to read through that to find information about what the UN report seems to think. Most people are not going to do that. Ethan Klein's not going to fucking do that. It's too much work for most people. They want to read a little blog post that's fun and easy and explains everything that they want to believe.
And I mean, same. I heard all the other people say the science was bad, and I believed them. And the anti-vax people probably just believed whoever told them it was true. So, to be unbiased about this, let's really start at the beginning. Look at the original paper. That's the wrong page. Let's actually read this old paper and see what it has to say and come to an honest conclusion about its findings.
5 minutes late.
What the fuck? This is why people are against vaccines? This is the worst fucking paper I've ever read in my life!
This also doesn't mention the fact that medical research and papers sometimes have words that you don't know. Like, it starts talking about which receptors are doing what, interacting with which chemicals. And I'm like, oh God, now I have to look all of these things up. Are you kidding me? Just to understand this paragraph, I have to look up half the words in this paragraph. What is adipose tissue? Let's look it up. Okay, it's fat. Okay, it's fat. That's what it is. All right, got it. going back, and then it's just that over and over and over and over again.
Right, let's talk about the study. I'm calling it The Study because its real title was Ileal Lymphoid Nodular Hyperplasia, Nonspecific Colitis, and Pervasive Developmental Disorder in Children, which is a bit of a tongue twister. I had to do a not insignificant amount of Googling to find out whether it's pronounced ileal or ileal. Don't know why I bothered. If I got it wrong, it's not like you would have noticed. The paper's lead author is Dr. Andrew Wakefield. I'm sorry, there's a mistake in my script. The paper's lead author is disgraced ex-Dr. Andrew Wakefield. Wakefield is seen by many as the founder of the modern anti-vaccine movement, since he was behind the paper that started the whole thing. Let's keep an eye on that. Oh, fucking. The smoke machine occasionally goes off on its own for no reason. I can't be bothered to get up. The paper's supposed purpose was to investigate a connection between bowel disorders and developmental issues in children, in particular targeting signs of autism. So first off, what's a colitis? Right, hold on. Okay, colitis is inflammation of the colon, one of the main symptoms of bowel diseases like Crohn's disease, for example.
Colitis.
By the way, we're going to use words like bowel, colon, and intestine interchangeably in this video. Don't let it confuse you, they're mostly the same thing. If you're a doctor, pretend you didn't hear that. The paper says non-specific colitis because it's not looking for specific kinds of inflammation. It's looking at whatever inflammation these children happen to have and seeing how they compare, because maybe they're all linked, and maybe they're even linked to the autism. According to Wakefield, he just happened to notice a lot of kids with both autism and bowel disorders, and he launched the study to investigate a possible link. But what does all that have to do with vaccines? I mean, surely it must have found something for it to have caused all this controversy. Well, allow me to list the paper's highly scientific findings. Some of the parents of the children in the study think they remember the autism symptoms starting after the MMR vaccine. No, really, that's it.
Findings. Onset of behavioral symptoms was associated by the parents with measles, mumps, and rubella vaccination.
For literally decades, right, I've been hearing about this paper, and I've assumed that there must have been something there, like something to at least explore or discuss or debunk. Everyone lost their fucking minds over it, so surely there's something, and I finally go and read it, and it's just a bunch of fucking parents' opinions. There's just nothing there. I can't fucking believe this.
They look like little turds. I hate that. I hate those balls, dude. It's just like, why is it so wet and just things stuck on the wall? It's so gross. Anyway, sorry. This is exactly the same as that one study about trans suicide rates. There's this one, I want to say that it was a Swedish study. There's a video from Vadim about it that's pretty good, but it was talking about how transitioning leads to higher rates of depression and unacceptance and might lead to higher rates of suicide. And then you go and read the study, and the entire study is about parents' opinions about their kids, their trans kids. Like, I'm not joking. That's what the study is. The study is, well, I feel like my trans kid is going to kill themselves. Wow. This is the study. This is the study. This is what we're using as fact. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Same thing with rapid onset gender dysphoria. I don't know. I haven't seen enough of the studies on this.
Like, seriously, the disconnect between the attempts at real science and the stuff the parents think they remember is, like, so jarring. Like, next to colonoscopies and biopsies and graphs of urinary excretions, you'll suddenly get sentences like,
He received a dose of measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, the day after which his mother described a striking deterioration in his behavior that she did link with the immunization.
a note from your mother isn't science, it's how you get out of PE. I'm sorry, coach, I didn't really have polio. Maybe some home decorating will relax me. I love this poster because I'm smart, and now all my guests will know I'm smart. I have tons of guests, I'm a party animal, I have a charisma of at least 6. I wonder why The Economist interviewed ContraPoints and not me.
God, oh my God, dude. I forgot how funny he is. I forgot how funny his videos are, dude. Please drop another banger, man. Fuck. Please. So good.
Does that look alright to you? No, Rachel, don't wave the camera. That's not how people communicate.
Page 3 of the study provides a table listing each child's behavioral diagnosis, largely autism, and also what their parents identified as their exposure, the thing which, in their opinion, caused the diagnosis. Of course, most of them blame the vaccine.
Now, while a bunch of opinions are about as useful in science as a bath made of teeth, we might as well explore how someone might end up having that opinion.
It's actually really common for us to... Actually, hey, Angie?
Yeah?
Could you draw me as a ferret, please?
Okay. Why?
I will not explain why. It's actually really common for us to assume two things that happen to us around the same time must be caused by one another. That's how we, as ape people whose fur fell off one day, think about things with our tiny, godless little monkey brains. If you ate some strange new berries and got sick that day, you're basically programmed to connect the two for the sake of your own survival. This is the 1 in 10 times that evolutionary psychology is real. The rest are fake, Malcolm, but these correlations we make in our heads between events aren't necessarily true. It might not have been the berries. It could have been all the budget energy drinks you import from Thailand. You know what? Maybe you can have too much carabao. Another big problem here is how humans relate to spans of time. Just like how under quarantine you might not even—
I mean, it's this meme. Evolution, can you give me pattern-seeking brain to avoid predators? Yes. I'll let it sit for a second. And for those who don't know, I can now poison you into knowing.
Okay, but I love my budget Asian energy drinks. Sad face. They got me through uni.
Correct.
even notice 4 months passing because nothing happens anymore. If someone coughs on you today and later in the evening you start to feel a bit sick, a lot of people might remember being coughed on and assume that's how they got it. But illnesses can take days or weeks to incubate. Maybe you don't remember the time you got coughed on 2 weeks ago by the guy who was delivering the last crate of energy drinks. Oh, Carabao, why is it so hard to quit you? Win football tickets? I can't wait to be in a crowd of people again. The table claims some of the parents notice the symptoms a few weeks, days, or even hours after getting the vaccine. But I do have to wonder how easy it is for someone to recall something as complex as the exact date of the onset of a child's behavioral symptoms. A BBC documentary from back in the day interviewed a parent and they said on camera that their son became autistic overnight after the vaccine.
What happened to your other son?
Overnight. He had the fever, the high temp, literally overnight. He was never the same again.
Even the interviewer was like, literally? Literally overnight? Like, are you sure? The signs of autism appear gradually and grow over time. When parents first take notice, there could easily be other signs they missed. Another better documentary about all this we'll get to later actually found parents who realized they'd made this exact mistake.
Stacey and Damien no longer believe that their daughter's autism was caused by MMR. After researching and remembering Rebecca as a baby, they realised that she had already shown symptoms before she was vaccinated.
Parents don't necessarily notice the symptoms until they're fairly obvious, but that doesn't mean the symptoms weren't there or their child wasn't autistic beforehand. I'm bringing this up because it's important to make the distinction that whenever someone describes something like their child's first symptom, what they are really describing is the first symptom they personally noticed. Here's a timeline of the first 2 years of a child's development. Statistically, the average age that symptoms of autism become noticeable to parents is around 12 to 18 months. Children in the UK receive a dose of the MMR vaccine from between 12 to 15 months. Isn't it possible that these parents are blaming a coincidental event? You can even see evidence that this happens in the paper, because some of the other parents blame other totally coincidental events. One of them blames their child's autism on an ear infection they got a week before they first noticed the symptoms.
Y'all ever get an ear infection and then become autistic?
Ear infections cause autism now? No, of course not. But if it was the only other thing that you remembered happening to your child, you can see how someone might end up assuming they're related. Before this study was released, there were a few very small clusters of parents that thought vaccines caused autism or other illnesses. JABS, the Justice, Awareness and Basic Support Group, wow, they really worked hard to make their name say JABS, had been around for a few years beforehand. The founder of JABS, Jackie Fletcher, asserts to this day that her son suddenly became severely autistic 10 days after his MMR vaccination, and has frequently tried to sue the government and MMR manufacturers for money over it. It's important to recognize that statistically, even if vaccines are perfectly safe, you're going to get a small amount of parents like her who are convinced that vaccines are harmful because they got one right before something like this happened. Before there was a scientific paper and thousands of news pieces telling them to, there really weren't that many parents of autistic children who blamed the vaccine. According to a pro-JABS piece made in May 2002 when the scare was happening, there were thousands of members, but before all that there were only about 30 sets of parents at best. And speaking of groups being too small to be statistically meaningful, another big problem, or to put it another way, a small problem, is sample size. Please hold your applause until the end. On its own, a study of a small sample size, like 12 children, can't prove anything about the rest of a population. I've made this point about people drawing sweeping conclusions from small studies before. However, it's important to understand sample size contextualize criticisms in the proper context. Studies on small groups happen all the time in science, for a good reason. They're often called pilot studies, and they're useful for figuring out how a bigger study should work in preparation for the real thing, or for checking to see if there's something worth looking into in the first place. A fraction of parents of the tens of millions of children who've had this vaccine saying they think there might be a connection is, at best, grounds to do a better study on a bigger group of children to find out if this connection actually exists. We're going to come back to this later, because someone had the opportunity to do one of those, and what they did with that opportunity is very interesting. That was an awful take, let me do that again. In summary, the science is really bad. It's bonkers. The study even admits it doesn't prove anything at the end.
We did not prove an association between measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine and the syndrome described.
The next sentence is hilarious.
Virological studies are underway that may help to resolve this issue.
The issue being that they don't have any proof. In science, it's expected to admit the limitations of your study. Papers and medical journals have high standards for what constitutes solid proof. However, Wakefield is using this as a shield. By hiding behind the defense that he hasn't claimed to prove anything, he can then speculate about a lot of things he hasn't proved. For example, these children appear to share similar, though non-specific, bowel problems. I say appeared because, well, we'll come back to that, but Wakefield takes this vague collection of similar things and concludes with the theory that could make his career, that the vaccine may cause autism and it happens through the bowels.
We have identified a chronic enterocolitis in children that may be related to neuropsychiatric dysfunction. In most cases, onset of symptoms was after measles, mumps, and rubella immunization. Further investigations are needed to examine the syndrome and its possible relation to this vaccine.
In literally the final sentences of the paper, Wakefield invents a new disease that combines bowel disorders and autism, and then speculates that MMR vaccination might cause the disease he just made up. This is absolutely buck wild, as some would put it. It's like medical fan fiction. Sure, he admitted it just may be, and said we need more research to prove anything, but now his made-up disease is in a published scientific paper in one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world. Journalists with little to no scientific knowledge go on to report on this paper as if it's discovering this new disease.
Doctors at the Royal Free Hospital believe they may have discovered a link between the combination vaccine and a bowel disease that can progress to autism.
What are you talking about? He admitted he didn't prove anything and then wildly speculated at the end. No! There is one last really weird thing about this paper we haven't mentioned yet, which most people don't seem to mention, which I find a little bit weird and indicates that no one has actually read it. Towards the end of the paper, Wakefield tries to find other papers that kind of support his findings, so he really has to scrape the bottom of the barrel.
Fudenberg noted that for 15 of 20 autistic children, the first symptoms developed within a week of vaccination.
Wow, that's a really interesting thing to... Isn't it? We should probably actually go read Fudenberg's paper and see what it has to say for itself. Fudenberg's 1996 paper cited here is from Biotherapy, a fringe journal for quacks that actually went out of business 2 years later. The paper is a pilot study on the effects of a substance called dialysable lymphocyte extract on children with autism. In addition to alleging that several of the children had become autistic within a week of getting vaccinated, are you ready for this? Fudenberg claimed that this extract he'd created could cure autism.
Of the 22 with classic autism, 10 became normal, in that they were mainstreamed in school and clinical characteristics were fully normalized.
Became normal! Holy shit! And you want to know something funny? You want to know something funny? At the time that the study was published, Fudenberg didn't have a medical license. It was revoked the year before because he was caught stealing controlled substances from his job for personal use. The South Carolina Medical...
No, guys, this guy is trustworthy, okay? He's curing autism. Who cares if he's not a doctor? You wokies just want to have your autism. Yeah, it's J.D. Vance's mom, yeah.
Board found him guilty of engaging in dishonorable, unethical, or unprofessional conduct. He admitted he'd done it in the hearing too. So he got caught stealing drugs, admitted it, got fired, lost all credibility, probably wasn't even allowed within 100 yards of a stethoscope, and then a year later, he cured autism. According to him, and you know he's trustworthy because he admitted to stealing all those medical supplies. What I'm trying to say here is,
Ex-Dr. Hugh Fudenberg's paper is one of the most obviously bullshit things I've ever read, and Wakefield had to cite it to create a precedent for his findings. This is the best he could get. You can see why it's a bit weird no one brings this up, right?
In scientific circles, everyone who read Wakefield's paper, or worse, bothered to check the sources it cited, had, you know, a few minor concerns. It was so concerning that The Lancet published in the same issue a response to the paper. Vaccine adverse events, causal or coincidental. It points out numerous problems, some of which we've discussed here already, and has some words to say about fear-mongering about vaccines like this.
Vaccine safety concerns, such as that reported by Wakefield and colleagues, may snowball into societal tragedies when the media and the public confuse association with causality and shun immunization.
Why are they publishing this crap? Not to spoil the video, but money. Sorry, I have watched this video before. Some might call it pre-watching even. TLDR, money. Wakefield, I believe is his name, found a way to, or thought it would be good to make profit by selling the vaccines separately by claiming that the vaccines together were causing autism. That if you get the MMR vaccines together, you're going to get the autism, but not his vaccines that he's giving separately that won't give you autism.
This would be tragic because passion would then conquer reason and the facts again in the UK.
This commentary would probably have seemed darkly apocalyptic at the time, but in retrospect, it was a shockingly accurate prediction. Like, they knew.
There's literally a measles outbreak in Texas. There's a measles outbreak in Texas.
They fucking warned us! So even before the paper was in the public eye, other doctors and scientists were looking at it and saying, "This ain't it, Chief." Is that still a current reference? I've aged 10 years in the last 2 weeks, time is meaningless. But despite a lot of obvious concerns and clear weaknesses, Wakefield published the study anyway. And then, and this is weird, he immediately held a press conference about it. This isn't something that anyone normally does in science, especially not after publishing a 5-page study that admits it didn't prove anything. The paper was so small and its findings so insignificant that it barely even qualifies as a paper. In fact, it was published in The Lancet as an early report. See, in the top left corner? Zoom in on it. You've got to be quicker on the draw than that. Holding a press conference for this is something you do if you want attention for your controversial paper, not if you're trying to do science.
And here's where the whole thing really started. During the press conference, Wakefield pretended his study had discovered a risk so earth-shaking that the government should stop using the MMR vaccine.
What I think is wild is the parents that are like, oh my God, something made my child autistic. Meanwhile, their dad refuses to eat the color green and has a room full of model trains in the attic. Dare I bring up like crystal mommies as a concept? Dare I? Your entire home is covered in crystals, but you're afraid your kid is going to be autistic. Newsflash, lady!
And replace it with measles, mumps, and rubella vaccines given separately.
One more case of this is too many. We put children at no greater risk if we dissociate those vaccines into 3, but we may be averting the possibility of this problem.
This is the moment that changed everything. Wakefield told a room full of reporters that based on his study, he felt the MMR vaccine could be putting millions of children at risk.
The mainstream media were in love with the notion that the paper had found something, so they ran with it. All the way into hell.
The paper was bad, sure, but mass movements against vaccines don't start because of the release of a paper. Like we discussed, people don't read papers. I didn't read it for like 20 years. And you know who else didn't read it? Every journalist who reported on it. But when a doctor publicly says the government is putting millions of children at risk with a vaccine rolled out nationwide, even if his paper's a load of old shit, you gotta report on that. The possibility was too tantalizing to ignore. It's really hard to get across how unavoidable the issue was. If you even glanced at a TV or a newspaper in the mid-2000s, it was MMR might cause autism, or it was Princess Diana is still dead.
Measles kills thousands of people every year. But today, questions about the vaccine.
Vaccination could be linked to a new side effect, a combination of bowel disease and autism.
Hundreds of articles, news pieces, and documentaries were made about the potential significance of this study. They rarely show or discuss the contents of the paper itself, but the doctor behind it came out against MMR. There's a potential link. There's a potential link, everybody! Panic! And do you know what happens when every news resource is screaming about the potential risks of a vaccine? You make millions of people terrified to vaccinate their children. I was growing up during the MMR scare, and the main thing I remember from the TV news at that time was big shots of pointy needles and children screaming as they get given an injection and ominous voiceovers saying, oh, these vaccines might be dangerous. It's almost like TV deliberately scares people for ratings because that's how this works. That's the entire point. If you want to know why thousands of...
It can't possibly be that kids are scared because they don't like needles inherently. It must be because the kids can sense that there's autism inside of that vaccine.
Parents think MMR gave their children autism, it's not because they came to that conclusion on their own. We've seen how, before all of this reporting happened, only a teeny tiny minority of parents made the connection between autism and the vaccine. They could only find 7 parents of autistic children who blamed MMR in the original study even. The only thing that changed was how many news outlets were telling everyone the vaccine might cause it. After years of the media telling them it could have been the jab, some parents started to believe it.
His symptoms started to appear when he was 2, soon after he had his MMR. This is the age at which autism usually develops, but his parents don't believe it's coincidence.
His parents didn't believe it was a coincidence because every news resource was telling them it might have something to do with the vaccine. And trusting that the media had done the work and knew what they were talking about, they believed what they were being told. The end result of publications and broadcasts like this was a lot of concerned parents, a lot of unvaccinated children, and a whole lot of new cases of measles.
With inoculation rates falling to dangerous levels.
In Ireland, the debate over MMR has been fueled still further by a measles outbreak which killed 3 children. Whatever the official evidence, which rejected a link between MMR and autism, fewer parents were prepared to take a risk.
I wonder why that might be. Could it be because every time you turned on the television there's footage of a screaming child with a needle in its arm? Once literally every other doctor had come out saying, look, there's no proof, please stop doing this, a lot of journalists got really defensive suddenly and started putting out pieces like, no, I will not stop reporting scaremongering bullshit. Wait, the same journalist wrote both of these. She just spent like 6 months of her career complaining about people criticizing her. Amazing. So, what was Andrew Wakefield doing during all this? Well, he was getting interviewed non-stop and having clips played in almost all of these news pieces. He was like a celebrity, especially to the growing list of parents newly convinced by the media's reporting that he'd discovered why their children had autism. For a couple of years, Andrew Wakefield was the sort of guy who you filmed in slow motion and black and white. Holy shit. Wakefield used his time in the spotlight to spread even more doubt about MMR and continue to repeat the recommendation that parents get separate vaccines instead. At the press conference, in interviews in the aftermath, and 4 whole times on a 23-minute videotape he sent to journalists, he claims he thinks separate vaccines would avoid the risk of autism.
Andrew Wakefield says he appealed to the chief medical officer more than 6 months ago to give worried parents the option of the single vaccine.
My recommendation has been that children should continue to be vaccinated, but to separate the vaccines, there is sufficient anxiety in my own mind over the safety, the long-term safety of the polyvalent, that is the MMR vaccination in combination, that I think that it should be suspended in favour of the single vaccines. There is sufficient anxiety in my own mind that it would be sensible to divide them into separate doses. There is sufficient anxiety that the parents must have a choice of how they protect their children.
It's really kind of interesting that while the modern anti-vaccine movement insists that all vaccines are dangerous in some way, the guy who started the fear and anxiety that led to this was pro-vaccine.
We advocate vaccination. This is not anti-vaccine in any way.
He was really specific about the fact that he thought parents should keep vaccinating, just that they should use alternatives to MMR.
The single vaccines are likely in this context to be safer.
Remember that disease he speculated about at the end of his paper? That there might be some kind of bowel disorder caused by MMR that then leads to autism? This came up in the media a lot as well.
Could the MMR jab be causing a strange new kind of bowel disease that was turning the children autistic?
Measles, mumps and rubella given.
Don't say bro's got the fuck my shit up hairdo. Don't say that. This is back in the 80s. We didn't have hair technology yet.
Together may be too much for the immune system.
Also, bowel autism is crazy, dude.
Children to handle. There is a bowel disease, a new syndrome associated with regressive autism, and that may be related to MMR.
Eventually, he even came up with a name for it: autistic enterocolitis. Wakefield's theory, when he tries to explain it, is that the almost dead measles virus present in the MMR vaccine can get stuck in the intestine somehow, causing all that inflammation they apparently found in the study, more on that later, which leads to it not digesting certain foods like bread and milk properly, turning them into, his words, a morphine-like substance, which then leaks out of the bowel and into the brain, causing autism.
That sounds good. That sounds like a good study. You get the MMR, and then it makes your bowels inflamed, and then you can't process bread and milk, and then that leaks into your brain, which gives you autism because of the morphine-like quality. That's how those things work. Infinite morphine glitch, question mark?
Morphine-like substances from the gut that you and I produce in our diet from milk and wheat
What a piece of
are
shit,
actually
dude.
getting access through that leaky gut into the developing brain.
This theory is, very strange. One of the many strange things about it is that it specifically implicates the measles part of the vaccine. If measles, when it's in a vaccine, can cause a syndrome that leads to autism, how could you possibly be so certain that the separate vaccine for measles would be safe?
The risk of this particular syndrome developing is related to the combined vaccine, the MMR, rather than the single vaccines.
Okay, sure, but why? On what basis are you saying that, Andy? How could a doctor so easily make that recommendation?
And it may be that giving the measles on its own reduces the risk of this particular syndrome developing.
He just keeps saying it.
My opinion, again, is that the monovalent, the single vaccines, measles, mumps and rubella, are likely in this context to be safer than the polyvalent vaccine.
That's the MMR vaccine.
There's actually a real reason why he recommended the separate vaccines so much. We'll get to that later. Here's the one example I could find of an interviewer asking him to explain himself.
But even supposing the measles element of the MMR vaccine had deposited the virus in the intestinal tissue of these children, a single jab of measles might do the same.
Theoretically, it might.
But you're advocating a jab, single jabs instead of MMR.
I said theoretically.
Oh, only theoretically. Well, that's fine then. What a great scientist.
But if you say it may do, then how can you advocate a single jab of measles, even if there's only a theoretical possibility that it might damage a child?
While that question mark exists, at the very least, parents deserve a choice of how they protect their children against these infections, whether it be with the MMR vaccine or whether it is with the single vaccine.
He always finds a way to pivot back to how...
Why does every health quack look so fucking unhealthy? You don't think that RFK looks like the image of perfect health? Really?
Bowel autism is something that happens to me whenever I eat cheese.
Midst of all of these questions and concerns, which he started, parents should at least have the option of a separate vaccine. Honestly, you'd think he was some kind of salesman for alternative vaccines. Autistic enterocolitis is not, and has never been, accepted as real by gastroenterology, the field specializing in the stomach and intestines. But an ordinary person, or worse, a journalist, might not understand it enough to know that it doesn't make sense. So, of course, it got reported as an interesting new idea.
It was a bold and controversial theory.
That's an interesting choice of words. This piece by that really defensive lady, Melanie Phillips, one of the most well-paid journalists in Britain at the time, is still continuing to spread it in this very article about being criticized for spreading it. She calls it a unique gut-brain disease. When you imagine a new disease, of course it's gonna sound unique, Melanie. No red
He looks like the character that got bit by a zombie but won't admit it. Stop.
flags popping up around the fact that no disease has ever functioned like this before? No? Fucking hell! This completely unproved, unique, bold, and controversial theory was irresistible to Phillips, a Bigot of the Year award-winning writer famous for also denying climate change, calling Obama an Islamist, describing a group of liberal Jews as Jews for genocide, and opposing both Irish independence and gay rights, which she dismissed as an attack on the traditional family by cultural Marxism. It's not shocking.
She sounds like a really wonderful person.
Phillips was wrong about MMR. It's her job to be wrong about everything. The truly shocking thing about this is that for once, the entire rest of the British media were on the same side as her, uncritically regurgitating everything Wakefield said to millions of people. This completely irresponsible reporting caused fear, vaccine hesitancy, kickstarted an anti-vaccine movement that's still here today, and resulted in the deaths of children from completely preventable diseases. And that's the tea, sis. There's real liquid in there. I'm not doing a bit. I will spill it if I try and show it to you. I'm sorry. But there's, look, see? It's real. It's not tea though, it's coffee. I'm not a farmer. Perhaps the only thing more frustrating than seeing the media do everything it can to push pseudoscience was how everyone actually addressed the topic of autism. Autism is a complex condition we still don't fully understand, with many variations in symptoms and severity. But the media never mentioned that. They deliberately went looking for the most severe and extreme cases they could find, and then filmed them to exploit for television. Children who couldn't communicate verbally or had severe physical disabilities as well. The intent to make the MMR question as serious as possible resulted in an almost pornographic obsession with suffering children. They went out of their way to portray autism as a horrific tragedy that it's worth risking a disease to avoid. And yeah, measles is a disease.
That's my water
cat. It kills people. It can cause incredibly severe complications that are with people for life. We as a society are no longer really aware of just how dangerous measles can be because we don't see all those complications as much because of vaccinations. Measles, mumps, and rubella are legitimately dangerous and potentially life-threatening diseases, and it says a lot about how we think about neurodivergence that it's worth risking that to avoid being autistic to some people. Hell, I was in Waitrose a few months ago. I never shop there, but I pretend to, so I can use their unnecessarily massive parking space. And I saw them selling a magazine with this on the cover. Reignite your child's brain with
reversing
alternative
autism?
treatments. What they mean there is alternatives to treatment. This is not how a healthy society discusses its people. Autistic people have to navigate a world that refuses.
Does anyone remember the video of the woman who faked having a vaccine injury and could only walk backwards? I remember multiple people pretending like they were like shaking. They're like, oh, I got the COVID vaccine and now I can't stop shaking. I can't stop shaking. And then another video, they'll be like, hand me a beer. And I can't stop shaking since I got the COVID vaccine. And I'm like, hello? Oh my God. We're just lying. We're lying. We're just lying. Remember the three ladies who were shaking together on TV? That was bad. That was not good. That was really bad. I want to see if I can find it. Remember the lady who walked backwards? I actually don't remember that lady. I only remember I think it was a lady who was trying to pretend like she had gotten, I don't know, Parkinson's or something. But then she like reaches for the beer totally fine, drinks it totally fine, and then goes right back to shaking. And it's like, wow. That's interesting and very nice that that didn't happen. Okay. All right. That's the same one. Stop. No, stop. Stop, dude. What is this? Cheerleader gets a swine flu shot and can only walk backwards.
Well, now, this is a story of an amazingly beautiful young woman. She was training to be a pro football cheerleader, and she got a flu shot. She says that shot has destroyed her chances of happiness. We told you about her story last time. Now, Les Trent is with this woman for a first-hand look at what her life has become.
Right. She's the beautiful cheerleader whose heartbreaking story is shocking the nation. 25-year-old Desiree Jennings showed me how she can't walk without twisting,
she didn't
jerky
know.
movements.
This is not real.
But she walks backwards normally. Doctors say she has a rare 1 in a million neurological disorder that was triggered 10 days after she got a seasonal flu shot.
Started with me not being able to eat without...
This is not. No, this is a skit. This is a skit. This is a skit, dude. This is from The Onion, right? The commitment to the grift is crazy. Dude, and she was doing it before it was profitable.
Couldn't eat without passing out. I visited Desiree and her husband Brendan at their home in Ashburn, Virginia, to see what their daily life is like. She has to go up and down stairs backwards because something as simple as walking forward can be dangerous.
And here's the unusual part about
That's literally not how that works. That's not how that works. Stop. No, stop. Stop. This is... No, dude. No. No.
You might not remember.
There's an article on it? Wait, we're going to watch this. Wait.
disorder. Take a look at this. Desiree can run just fine. It's only when she stops. You see, that's where the spasms start. Now you can walk backwards though, and it'll make it better, right?
Yeah. She runs with a normal stride, and as I ran with her, she even spoke normally.
And now you can talk.
Yeah, it's weird. It fixes as soon as I start running.
I mean, you sound.
I know, it's great, isn't it?
You sound amazing. And then you stop, and that's what happens.
Desiree got a flu shot on August 23rd. 10 days later...
No, this is... No, guys, no. No one would lie. No, guys.
She came down with what doctors have diagnosed as dystonia, a rare neurological disorder. Her jerking and twisting are the result of uncontrollable muscle contractions. There is no known cure.
Are y'all ready?
Yes.
This is home video of Desiree as a beautiful bride when she married Brendan 2 years ago. And this is a photo when she was training to be a cheerleader for the Washington Redskins. Doctors say what happened to Desiree should discourage people from getting flu shots. But here's what the woman who's on the wrong side of being 1 in a million says.
Running has to be a relief.
No one's gonna have let